Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today we've got a special guest and that's Naomi Brockwell. So thanks for joining us, Naomi.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, you've been a very active member of the crypto community for some time and you're doing a number of different things. So I'll let you introduce yourself to everyone about how you got into crypto and what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah, I've been in the space for a while, not as long as some people, but probably since about 2013, I've been making videos about Bitcoin. So it's been a really exciting change of landscape since it all started then for me. Just seeing how the space has evolved, new tech that's developed, new people entering the space as well. But I'm mainly a television producer, so I produce for John Stossel here in the States, and then have my own show. It's a tech-focused show, mainly about Bitcoin and blockchain tech, and I also am I produce feature films as well. So at the moment, I'm producing a documentary about the housing crisis and a really cool project, actually, a TV series called the Hard Fork series. I'd love to chat to you about that. It's like a sci-fi thriller, big production that we're doing. That's been a whole lot of fun too. So that, in a nutshell, is what I'm doing at the moment, and emceeing a whole lot of conferences. So I MC about like at least 20 conferences a year in the blockchain space.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the main reason I wanted to have you on because I love your Twitter's just got so many interesting posts and some of the synergies to what you're talking about, the housing crisis we've been talking about a bit on the channel, and you just get to meet so many interesting people. So that was probably the first thing I wanted to ask. Who are the most interesting people you've met? I mean, I know you've been talking to people about Mt. Gox, Ron Paul about the Fed and Bitcoin and gold. So who's the most interesting people you've spoken with?
Gosh, I mean, Ron Paul was definitely a highlight for me. I I sent an email to my phone provider the other day, and they responded and said, gave me help with what I needed, and then said, "By the way, I saw your Ron Paul video. Great work." And I was like, "What? This is so weird, but also really cool." So yeah, that went down very well, especially the words of wisdom that Dr. Paul had to share with the community. Don't yield to government. I think that's a really important message right now in a time when everyone's talking about what kind of regulation can we do to make people happy and placate the feds and all of that. And he basically said, no, don't placate them, because it's just going to be an incremental encroachment in your territory, and you're just
Yes.
going to have more and more freedom taken away. So just don't do it. So that was a big highlight for me.
Even just today with the news, I think the market's having a bit of a panic. The SEC or was it the North American authorities have issued some warnings to shipping chain and maybe some other ICOs. But that's
I feel like the volatility, I mean, every time I see a price fluctuation, I just go into my Twitter and there's just all of this FUD, floating around, and SEC's announced another thing, or China's banned another thing. It's funny. It's a very threatening technology to government. So there are always this very strong-handed reactions to it, and the market always reacts to that, but then it bounces back really quickly. So it's fun to watch, but I never pay too much attention to it.
Where do you think the market's at a whole after talking to everyone at consensus? Some people have this opinion that we're not going to run until we get clarification on securities in all these different countries. I tend to think that Bitcoin is not going to wait for anyone. As you say, governments don't really have that much power over it. And I think people are going to realise that in the next few months, maybe.
I mean, everyone asked me for price predictions and all of that. No one knows. No one can predict any of this stuff. I'm long-term bullish, but what's going to happen in the meantime, who knows at all? It depends on a million different things, and very, very hard to predict.
Yeah, okay. I won't ask you any price questions then. Mount Gox, that was an interesting interview. How do you see that whole situation playing out?
Yeah, it's funny. My first Mt. Gox interview was when it was all happening, and it was before we knew what Carpelos was doing. He just kind of stopped responding and started talking about his cat sitting on his keyboard, and everyone was like, "What is going on here?" So I did an interview with a friend of mine when that all happened, and just been following it really closely since then. I have a lot of friends who lost money in the whole fiasco, and so getting word that the money is going to be given back in the yen equivalent, rather than in actual Bitcoin. Like, they're not taking the remainder of the Bitcoin that they've been able to recover and dividing that and giving it out per however much each user's share. has, but instead they're denoting in yen, and any remaining Bitcoin, I presume, is going to go to Capella. So no one really knows. There's no real clarity yet. And that's devastating because a man who was either incredibly fraudulent or completely inept to like almost verging on being maliciously inept, and might become a billionaire from receiving all this money. It just doesn't sit very well with me.
Yeah, and it probably shows the interface between the crypto world and the traditional world, and all the laws you have to follow during bankruptcy, and how it's just doesn't work for exchanges in that
Yeah.
specific situation, as you say. So,
Yeah, they might definitely. I mean, they'll have to revise the way that they deal with assets, especially ones that fluctuate so much in value, and especially going into the new like digital asset age. It's a different world. I think officials are going to have to rethink how they deal with all this stuff.
yeah. Let's have a chat about consensus. I know a lot of people have got mixed opinions about the conference itself, and some people were expecting announcements and so on. So you were pretty active there. How was your take on consensus?
Well, I was pretty lucky. So I got a behind the scenes take the whole way because I emceed the whole conference.
Yeah.
And for me, that was sensational. So from my point of view, the energy of the audience was through the roof. The attendance was so high. It's the largest blockchain conference in history. So that alone was really exciting for me to be a part of. I think that some people were upset because there were so many people there. And you could take that as a good thing or a bad thing. If you've been in the space for a really long time and suddenly you see all these new people coming in, who have a different take than a lot of the original people in the scene, then I can see why some people would have their nose out of joint. But from my personal perspective, I thought it went really, really well. Some fantastic speakers there. I really enjoyed a lot of the panels. There was a great panel, fiery one. You should check it out. I was Jimmy Song and Joseph Lubin, and they kind of went at each other, and it was beforehand. Jimmy was backstage and he's like, Naomi, have there been any pyrotechnics at this conference yet? And I was like, no, not really. It's been pretty well-mannered panels. And he said, all right, I'll bring the pyrotechnics. And he did. He's just like, it was a fun panel. So that was great. I loved Zuko's panel. There was just some really great conversations there.
I do like Jimmy, and we have had him on the channel, but do you have any thoughts personally on some people that are just, very reluctant to say everything else is, a shitcoin versus versus Bitcoin? But I think some people are maybe too close-minded to the fact that, in Australia, we've got some great companies now, Power Ledger, Horizon State, that have got real use cases for blockchain. I think sometimes those Bitcoin people can be very focused on just Bitcoin and not acknowledge that there's some great blockchain-based projects out there.
Well, it just depends what you're after and where philosophically you're aligned. I definitely don't begrudge them. They have very strong reasons for their opinions. I'm not of that perspective personally. I'm really excited to see this blockchain tech being applied to different industries. A lot of it is going to fall through. A lot of it's not going to work. We know that.
Yes.
But I'm still really excited to see people trying and seeing, blockchain technology is inherently a freedom enabling tech. It's something that enables us to decentralize things. That's great, in my opinion. If you can have a distributed system rather than a centralized one, generally it will mean that more power gets evenly spread around more people, and that, from my perspective, is a good thing. And it's interesting because, the space started out with very staunch libertarians. I happen to be one of them.
Yeah.
And now there are a lot of people who come to the space who love blockchain tech, but don't agree with me philosophically at all, yet they still want to apply this tech to their sector. And here am I thinking, I could get angry at that, be like, you don't even get it. But on the other side of things, I'm like, great, go ahead, apply this freedom-oriented tech that you don't really understand to your industry. The more freedom, the better, from my perspective.
I couldn't agree more. And some people, as you say, after 6 months or 12 months, you actually see in the articles, they say, wow, I didn't realize that this is a social movement. There's so much more to this than just, putting a blockchain in my business model. It's about so much more. So, Very
And that's
interesting.
really exciting to see such a ginormous industry and movement come from what started out with a really fringe group of people who are all into encryption and wanted to take control away from the government monopoly on the money supply. So that, for me, from my perspective, is awesome
Yeah.
to see that.
And all these different conferences, do you have any that you would recommend, or have you had any really good experience where there's been examples of that, where people have left, Visa, big banks, and they're joining this movement, and told you any stories that stick out in particular?
I mean, always. As I said, I go to a lot of different conferences. Some of them have more of a networking base where they're just trying to bring people together. Some are more informative, where it's all about, I'm going to educate you on what the new tech is. I think, just get recommendations from your friend of people. If you have speakers who've been to specific conferences, then find out why they like them or why they don't like them. There are lots that I could recommend, and I do recommend to people. And I mean, Consensus is one of them that we just did, but lots of others as well.
Yeah.
In terms of anecdotes, I mean, there's constantly anecdotes. I mean, you're seeing people who were in the traditional financial sector realizing all of the limitations of that sector and all of the bureaucracy and all of the red tape, that everything's slow moving there. And suddenly you're in this lightning pace industry where things are changing. I feel like I have my ear to the ground all the time because I'm constantly hearing what's going on and hearing presentations about the latest thing, and I'm always trying to keep up. I feel so far behind always, because the next conference I go to, I see someone make a presentation and I'm like, oh wow, that's happening now, that's awesome. So it's just so fast moving. I can understand why people are switching over and joining this side, because it's exciting, it's cutting edge tech.
100%. Every day you can sit there and read the news all day, and you wake up the next morning and things have changed just from one article. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Or the price has crashed because of something the SEC has announced.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about that TV series. So Hard Fork, funded by crypto. What's that going to be about?
Yes, so I actually just wrote an article for Forbes recently chatting about different alternative fundraising and capital raising methods that exist now since the advent of cryptocurrency. And it's super exciting. So this is a project that started out, it was incubated on Steam, and it was a group of awesome people. So Doug Carr's the director, he's a Sundance alumni. You have Christopher James Baker. He was in Ozark and in True Detective and
love that
a
one.
bunch of things. Yeah, and he's just awesome. So anyway, this awesome group of people, Eric, got heaps of people involved, but they got together on Steemit. They started producing content. They put it on Steemit, and it got upvoted, and they get money. And so they take the money and they make something with that money, and then they put it on Steemit, and it'd get upvoted, and they'd get more money. So then they'd use that money to invest back into the project. They kept making all of these things to the point where they raised about $30,000 in incubation money through Steemit. We made a teaser trailer, which we then debuted at Steamfest in Lisbon last year, where we actually got to meet people face to face, and that's super exciting, face to face, who were Steemit supporters, who were creating fan art for us, and who were giving us all this support for the project. We actually got to meet them, and we got to see their feedback firsthand. That was awesome. Seeing people face to face, where you only know them as Jill 12 hash question mark, and suddenly you meet and you're like, oh, you're a real person. That was really cool. So from there, we then went to Dash, and we got what was close to $1 million in Dash, and basically going through the cryptocurrency route. There are all these different ways to raise capital, and we're taking notes all along the way and recording how we're doing everything, so that we can let people know, and we can provide a template for other filmmakers and other artists so they can follow in our footsteps. Because I don't think many people in the artistic space really understand what's going on and all of the options that are available to them now. It's a total democratization of the entertainment industry, and it's really exciting. So yeah, this has been a dream project. It's a multi-million-dollar series. It's very gritty, sort of a Blade Runner-esque feel. It's about world where the government is, this totalitarian regime that has become anonymized, and they have this central blockchain that they're using. Everything is tracked, recorded through the blockchain. You got your health records and your travel and your purchases and all of that. And then a group of renegades come in, they want to decentralize everything. So it's been a whole heap of fun to work on, and I'm super grateful to be part of it as a producer and an actress. So that's cool.
That sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
watching that one. And as you say, the crowdfunding model of being able to pitch an idea versus having to seek traditional funding, it's just going to change, hopefully, what we're watching, and content creators getting rewarded directly. So, very exciting.
I mean, a lot of people talk about the, ICO market as, oh, it's awful because they're all these scam artists and it's terrible. It's like, look at the real world, the fully heavily regulated world. Yeah, that's full of scam artists too. So, a lot of people say, well, ICO should be shut down because it's just, people are getting ripped off. And examples like, Bernie Madoff or Enron or the 2008 crash, all of those were heavily regulated areas, and people still got, like, more money was lost in that than all ICOs combined. So for me, what I think of ICOs, I think it's just an incredible freeing of the capital markets, and what we're seeing is huge investment into cutting edge technology. That's exciting, people being able to spend their money where they want to spend it. So I applaud it, and I also encourage everyone to do their due diligence and to research projects and to not invest more than you're willing to lose, and just be very careful out there. Take responsibility for your purchases, but get involved and get hunting and researching, because it is exciting too.
Yeah, it's going to break down borders, and the countries that out-regulate are going to lose that innovation, I think, as well. So
I mean, that's what happened in New York with the bit license. I remember being at the hearings here in New York when it was all being debated, and they held Charlie Shrem up as this case example. They just arrested him the day before in this very public setting. They got him at, the airport, and the press just happened to be there, and the whole hearing, all you heard is, well, to stop bad people like Charlie Shrem. He was like held up as this money launderer in the space, and you have people like Ben Lawsky saying things like, oh, I don't care if 1,000 flowers are stopped from blooming as long as we catch one bad guy. And it's such a backwards opinion. It's so ridiculous. So then to see people like Lawsky just switching sides now and becoming a consultant and getting very rich, being on the board of all different things now, it drives me insane, because they killed Bitcoin in New York. They drove out Kraken. So many companies just immediately left, and I think 4 bit license have been issued in the last 4 years. Honestly, 4? You think 4 worthy companies in the blockchain space are the only ones? There are only 4 of them that have emerged. It's ridiculous that only 4 have been issued. So it's just a case in point that government is so heavy-handed, and they just killed all of the innovation in this space in New York.
Yeah. And one by one, people are doing that 180 that you mentioned and joining the space and pretending like they never said anything against it. So,
it's like, now that I've destroyed this industry, let's jump on board that industry. Now that I've made it really hard for anyone to actually work here, I'll work for one of the companies that can work here, and they're going to get quite a big advantage.
That's probably a great place to wrap it up, Naomi. We could talk all day. I really appreciate you coming on. Guys, I highly recommend following Naomi on Twitter and the work she does, and I'm sure we'll talk again in the future.
Well, I think that my Twitter followers make it very entertaining for everyone. I have just before we go, I have some anecdotes. So like had this competition for people to design me a backdrop, and I got all of these crazy things submitted, which are awesome. I have this one guy who made me make this stamp, this MC verified, because he says that it's not a real Bitcoin conference unless I've emceed it. So I started stamping everyone at consensus. My followers are crazy. There are some fun shenanigans going on there. So follow it for them, if nothing else.
You've got to love the communities out there. They keep us on our toes, if nothing else.
Cool, yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
Awesome. Okay, we'll see you again in the future, Naomi.
All right, thanks.